Okay, so if you've been following my channel, you know about the petition EU-7319 that I have been featuring on my channel. And I'm not really the best person to explain it. I mean, what I've been saying is my TLDR is to get ICE and Homeland Security out of Canada. Yeah, I'm not very descriptive when it comes to this stuff. So instead, I decided it's probably best to hear it from the person who initiated it himself. So in this video, we're going to hear from Dave Hamelin-Schuilenburg, and he's going to help to explain the petition line by line for us. I learned a lot from this conversation, and I now fully understand why every Canadian needs to sign it. And to be honest, it's definitely more than me just saying get ICE out of Canada. So I'm going to jump into it right away. And this backdrop, I took it myself last year in the summer. And this one is from Spanish Banks in Vancouver. I don't even have to physically be there, but I can already smell the low tide. And I have to admit, I do miss being by the water. But let's get into the video conversation that I had with Dave Hamelin-Schuilenburg. How are you doing, Dave?
Good, and thank you for having me on, Mr. Chitil. It's great to be here and have an opportunity to discuss this very important petition.
Oh, I'm happy to have you here because you can definitely explain it a lot better than I can. So before we get started, I do want to thank Guillaume. Guillaume was actually the one that kind of pointed this in my direction. And I apologize to you, Guillaume, because I mean, you sent the email in a couple of weeks and I didn't read it because just my inbox was just so flooded. But we're at this point now, and I'm happy to be able to talk to Dave about it. Can you tell us a little bit more about the petition? And I mean, you've watched my videos and I briefly kind of discuss it, but I think it would be better if you kind of give us a better overview of what this petition is about.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, thanks for having me on. And I'd also like to take a moment actually to thank Guillaume. Guillaume, for full disclosure, is one of Indivisible Quebec's most newest members. However, he is very valued. Him and I have gotten to know each other a lot, and he's going to help me publicize this on the French side of the media as well. So, but after reading it about it, I felt, we wanted to, Indivisible Quebec wanted to come on and explain why this was a very important petition. Just a very quick synopsis about Indivisible Quebec. We are a progressive social activism group located on the Quebec side of the border. We're one of maybe 30 chapters around the world, part of the Indivisible family. I think in the US there's about 3,000 of them. We are a very peaceful / good trouble organization. And so this is one of those good trouble things that we're doing as opposed to throwing rocks and stuff at Garda World and stuff. So.
Right.
So with regards to the petition, so the crux of it comes down to the following. So we, and we have some members, we have about 2,500 Democratic registered members in Quebec, which is a sister organization of ours. That's where we actually got our start. And a lot of them are from different states in the US. And one of the members, for example, was from Minnesota. And when we saw what was going on in Minnesota, we started getting active. We did a rapid response rally in front of the consulate in Montreal. But most importantly, what it comes down to is after seeing what was going on south of the border, and especially in the last few months, also after learning that there were actually ICE offices within Canada, basically located within the consulates, and after learning that Canadian companies are knowingly complicit in offering support to ICE and enabling them to do their crimes, and probably the most important, discovering that Canadian taxpayers are unwittingly and unknowingly complicit in this because we are subsidizing some of these companies, including Garda World, which we'll talk about later. We at Indivisible Quebec decided that we felt an obligation on our side of the border to try to get involved and to start righting some of these wrongs. So that's basically the synopsis of the petition and why we got involved.
Got it. So in the petition, I mean, there's 4 main points that are pointed out to the House of Commons. And is it okay if we go through each one of them, and then that way you can?
Yeah, but before we do, so basically what it comes down to is we're trying to tackle it from 2 angles. So, and that's what the 4 points do. The first angle, obviously, is to get the Canadian federal government on the record and to express the Canadian position that ICE is definitely not welcome in Canada. They are persona non grata, and that in no way will we as Canadian citizens and we as a Canadian government collaborate with a rogue federal agency that kills its citizens and inhumanely scoops up people and detains them, whether they're citizens or not. The second part is to actually, it's like they say, follow the money, right? So we figured it. We went through the back door and we're saying, okay, who is enabling these guys, right? And now we're seeing that there's Canadian companies. So we wanted to make sure that the Canadian federal government also sends a message that it will not condone Canadian companies that does business with the Trump administration and enables these tyrants, the tyrant in chief, to achieve his atrocities. So this includes forcing public enemy entities that invest in these companies to divest from doing so, as Canadian taxpayers do not condone investing in facilities in organizations that help other organizations commit crimes. So that's really what it came down to. So yes, absolutely. Let's go through the point one by one.
Sure. All right. So the first point, formally call on the United States to seize and remove all ICE and HSI operational activities conducted from or within the United States consulates or other diplomatic facilities in Canada. So this one here is the one that actually caught my attention when I first read it, right? And I think for all Canadians listening right now, this is a huge concern for us. So did you want to explain this point first?
Absolutely. So there's 4 reasons behind that point. The first one, of course, is, and I should say basically, ICE, we all know who ICE is, thanks to the nonstop media coverage and, people getting shot down in a point blank range on live TV. But HSI is basically Homeland Security Investigation. So Homeland Security, of course, is a big organization, but they have offices apparently now in many different countries. In previous entities, it would have been called the CIA. They're the ones who do the background checks on everything. I mean, if we think about, the Iran hostage situation and so forth, that's where the CIA comes in. Well, now it's Homeland Security that's doing this, and they're doing it out of our own consulates, and this is unacceptable. We became aware of their presence thanks to the CBC, doing a very thorough investigation, which found that there were 5 consulates that are actually housing these ICE offices or these ICE departments.
I think I actually did a video on that. So
Yep. And then there are the other reasons why this became more apparent to us and more egregious to us. So the first 2 is one. The World Cup that was coming up, that became an issue. We saw that there was a possibility that they were going to be going to the Olympics, and then we said, wait a second, we don't want them at the World Cup either, especially if they the U.S. starts advancing in rounds. But more importantly, as you brought up in previous videos, most recently after we launched the petition, we're learning that there are companies, including Google, who are giving away our information. Some are doing it, reluctantly, such as Google, but in some cases they are giving away our information, and it can be estimated that this is probably at the request of, ICE and Homeland Security doing their investigations at a consulate. Okay, this Dave Schuilenburg guy, we want more information. So I'm pretty sure, for example, I'm probably on a blacklist at the border somewhere. Yeah. But the point is that this should not be allowed on Canadian soil, and so that's why we put that clause in. So,
got it. Yeah, I mean that's a big concern right now for everyone, especially with Google or the Canadian citizen being basically outed by Google, right? So anybody who has said anything bad about the United States government, in Canada or outside of the United States, can potentially be doxxed by Google or any of these big companies. So,
and we should not be enabling them to do it on Canadian soil, no less.
Yes, that's the thing too. It's like I used to. Back when I was living in Vancouver, I used to work across the street from the U.S. consulate in downtown Vancouver, and I would always see protests there, and I knew what was going on there and things like that. So, it's kind of scary to think that that building that I used to work across could potentially be gathering data of Vancouver citizens, right? So, that was my biggest concern when I saw that part.
Absolutely.
Yep. So the second point that we have here is affirm that Canada will not negotiate, enter into, or implement any agreement, formal or informal, allowing foreign law enforcement agencies to conduct enforcement activities on Canadian soil or waters, including the HR 5518 or similar authority is enacted. That I kind of got the gist of this one. Maybe it'd be better if you just explain it.
Yeah. So let's dissect that elephant. So the first part is about the sovereignty of Canada. Sovereignty of Canada, we are an independent country. Yeah, okay, we still have the monarch, but the point is that our sovereignty is paramount. Okay, and you touched on it right at the end of the last question, which is, he did protests in front of the consulate in Vancouver. As a lot of people know, Charlie Angus, former MP with the NDP, he did a protest right in front of the Toronto consulate, and he was politely asked in Canadian terms to move away from the front door, and we'll say within 100 yards of the front door of the consulate, by the Toronto police, no less. And when he asked why, it was because the consulate staff felt embarrassed. Well, I'm sorry. These protests are meant for that, to
Yeah.
embarrass you, that to bring attention to what you're doing. So that's the point. But the point is that the sidewalk is public space, and when
Mhm.
the American government, or any other government for that matter, because there are a lot of protests in front of the Russian embassy in Ottawa, you know, they don't have sovereignty over the sidewalk. Their land is within their fences, and that's it. And
Yeah.
so, you know, to be asked that we're not allowed to protest, to avail ourselves of our civic right and our constitutional right to protest, that goes against our sovereignty. So that's the first part of that, and that's why we included that in it. The second one would be with regards to 5518. What the fear I got in my mind was that with House Bill 5518, House Resolution 5518, sorry. Currently it's stalled, it's frozen in Congress. It has not been moved, but it can be anticipated that it will move forward soon. If it goes through, what it would do is it would provide the federal agency leads, so former Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi, now they've been replaced, but their replacements, to negotiate agreements with other governments, so the Mexican government and the Canadian government, to allow for cross-border law enforcement activity.
Right.
The fear in this is that, especially given the nature of the U.S. government at the moment, where the president is clearly attacking anybody who is an enemy of his, you know, whether they went after him from, you know, for the January 6th or anything like that, to anyone who he calls an enemy of the state, and that could be anybody who he believes is part of the organization, which is not really an organization, but Antifa. Anybody who is an anti-fascist, he can name them an enemy of the state. And under 5518, it could be anticipated that, let's say, you know, the New York State Police or the Vermont State Police are chasing somebody, or ICE is chasing somebody, and they get to the border, that they'll be allowed right through, and they can continue their hot pursuit chase onto Quebec soil or Ontario soil or Alberta or British Columbia soil. This cannot be allowed, because what's going to happen if, let's say, they shoot somebody dead on Quebec soil or on British Columbia soil? Now is the time for us to put our foot down and say, no, we will not allow for hot pursuits to come into Canada. You do your activities, you want to commit your crimes, you commit them down there, you do not commit it on our soil. So that's part of the reason why we included that. And the key for that is, you know, people are saying, well, now you're talking about conspiracy theories and so forth. I'm sorry, this is not a conspiracy theory at this point. I have actually spoken, and I'm going to be doing a video with a gentleman. His name is Edward. He was on Lake Champlain in Venise, Quebec, which is like literally on the border with St. Albans, New York. And the Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard, came into Canadian waters, capsized his little tiny rowboat. He was just fishing, and then when they grabbed him out of the water, they beat him up and then took him to St. Albans, all wet, and then brought him back to the border with no passport. And then the Canadian CBSA had the audacity to say, well, where's your passport? I wasn't anticipating on being capsized and beaten up and taken to St. Albans. So the point is that if the Coast Guard is already doing that, it can be anticipated that they will keep stretching the limits of their powers. And that's why it's important that we set this up now, so that ICE cannot do this stuff, or that other federal agencies cannot cross the border in hot pursuit. So
Right. I think I remember that story. He was in a boat just going alongside of the border on the Canada side, and the U.S. Coast Guard, you know,
it's a
allegedly
spot that he
overreached it.
fished in forever and ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually went to the shore with him. He took me on a walk, and you know, I touched the cement pillar there that they put out every so often right on the border, and you know, we walked about 200 yards, and he said it was right over there, and that's where I was. And yeah, so no, if this is already happening, you know, this is not out of the realm of possibility. This is not a conspiracy theory. So.
Right. Well, thanks for explaining that one to me. I was a little bit confused on it, but it makes total sense now. The third point, renounce federal service contracts with Garda World and review procurement involving companies supplying ICE or related agencies. Now, this one is actually an important one, I think. Now, Garda World, I actually haven't heard of this one. This isn't the company that supplied technical vehicles to ICE, is it?
No, that's
Okay.
that's Rochelle. That's Rochelle, and we will get to that soon. But that's exactly it. Is that so? In the case of Garda World, let's start with them. Garda World is actually most people are not aware, but they are one of the major contractors at Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, which is now, from what I heard recently this week, that they're going to probably shut it down. But they also are part of the system now, because they're creating, like, I think it was 11 or 14 detention centers across the U.S. And Garda World will be one of the major partners in basically securing that center. In other words, taking care of the detainees and so forth. And so that's the reason why we included them. Now, the question with regards to the petition, though, is that, okay, well, we can't stop them from doing business. We can't tell the U.S. government, okay, no doing business with Garda World, but we cannot put our money into it. And so right now, the question is, okay, well, what's the stake that the Canadian federal government has in Garda World? And that stake at the moment includes the fact that the Garda World is actually subcontracted by the Canadian government through CBSA to manage the holding center, the immigration holding center in Laval, just outside of Montreal. So it's a 131 capacity detention center, and they basically provide detention, transportation, security services, including managing the daily operations and security staffing. So we're asking the government to withdraw that contract with them. The other thing about Garda World as well is that I just saw this while I was on my trip in Holland last month, which is that they're actually now going to start to compete. For those who are not aware, this company is called Commissionaires. Commissionaires are basically a non-profit, quasi-government security agency. They try to give preferential hiring to vets and so forth, and they basically guard, the federal offices in Ottawa and so forth. Now, Garda World wants to start eating at that pie. They want to. This is going to affect the veterans and lose their jobs. So we are now sounding an alarm, saying no. Garda World cannot be allowed to start getting an even stronger footprint in the federal government. Now's the time to put the stops on that. And to the point of, in terms of subsidizing companies such as Garda World, in Quebec, it's actually very particular because we actually made two investments in Garda World. First of all, most recently, we had the Quebec government, through a corporation called Investment Quebec, put $300 million into Garda World, and this was probably right before the contract that they got with ICE. And so, that we should be trying to call back in those subsidies or loans or whatever it was. In fact, I'm going to be putting out a access to information request to find out what form those investments took. And also back in 2012, the Quebec government, through what we call our public pension system, the CDPQ in Quebec, invested $62.5 million into Garda World. So, at this point, Quebecers have right to feel ashamed that we are subsidizing a company that is basically enabling another agency in the U.S. to basically commit atrocities. And so we're saying now's the time to back out of that. So.
Is the investments only coming from the province of Quebec and Quebec
No,
citizens, or is it
absolutely not? In fact, that brings us basically to our fourth point. But no, there's a lot, and in fact, we recently learned that there are banks. All the major banks in Canada are, and there's a way to find that information out, which I'll share with you later. But there's a lot of public pensions across Canada, and federal and provincial are all investing in, maybe not Garda World, but in a lot of other companies in Canada that are, and even some companies in the U.S. that are enabling ICE to do their things. So,
right. Well, let's move on to the last question here. I'll read it out for my viewers. So, implement physical measures, including taxation, targeting Canadian companies that do business with ICE or related U.S. enforcement agencies. So, what was that company called that supplied the technical trucks to ICE?
That was Rochelle. That's Rochelle.
Yeah, so does Rochelle go under the category of number 4?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, as I'm not going to go back over Garda because I think we talked to that one to the dead end. But in Canada, currently there are the main companies that are invested into ICE are Garda World, Hootsuite, which is a online service.
I know Hootsuite, Vancouver,
and in Montreal. Rochelle, Shopify is a big one, and OpenText, which is located in Waterloo, CGI, who has its headquarters in Montreal, and an accounting firm called Deloitte. So these are all major companies in Canada who are investing and providing services to ICE, and we're basically saying, okay, we need the federal government through this petition to come out and say, okay, no, if you're going to do business with ICE or any other agency that commits atrocities like that, we're going to either tax you or whatever. We need to penalize these companies so that they are dissuaded from doing business with ICE.
Understood. I mean, I think it just needs to be reviewed on what companies are actually supporting ICE financially, and we have to put some pressure on our government to stop this. So,
Which leads me to my last point. People may have noticed this recently, especially with the World Cup coming. The federal government had already invested $145 million into the World Cup security operations in Canada. Now they're saying that they're going to be adding they're adding 145 million. This is on top of the 220 and the 100 million that they already. So, that's you do the math, okay? The point is, where is this money going, right? It goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is follow the money. And we need to see what's going on, because if ICE is coming, that should be a no-no. And if they're not coming, okay, well, who is the federal government giving this money to? Are they giving it to Garda World? And if that's the case, again, we need to denounce that. So I have a public access to information request, which is pending right now with the Public Safety Canada. I want to get more information on who all that money is going to, and that will be posted on our website. So,
okay. Got it. So thank you for explaining the 4 points in the petition. And hopefully, I mean, you explained it well to me, and, explained it like I was 5. So I totally understand it now. Now, my question is, I mean, with this petition, I mean, is there any other ways besides me helping to promote that this petition is going to be, what's the word? I guess promoted in other areas?
Yeah. Well, first of all, again, I thank you from the bottom of our heart at Indivisible Quebec for doing this. This is a great first step. Yes, we do have a website that's going to be coming out to help promote the petition. And thanks to an agreement with you, we're going to be posting this video on it so that the layman can understand what the ins and outs are of that petition, because we were limited to 250 words in the House of Commons. But, we had to make it as legalistic, if you would. But we wanted to take this opportunity to explain it in layman's terms, what like an FAQ type style video. And so that's going to be embedded in that video. There are already op-eds that are created. We're planning on doing a series of little mini 1 or 2 minute videos that we will be posting on social media and so forth. And of course, once all of this is out, then we can anticipate that there is a press release that's going to be coming out, and there will be a media tour that'll follow with it. So that is definitely all in the works. This petition ends on July 29th, and there will be more activities. For example, we will actually have to present this into the House of Commons based on the time schedule of the calendar. The House of Commons will actually be in recess as of July. So what that means is that when they come back in August, government will have 45 days to respond. But the point is that this will then come back. We will make a presentation in the press gallery, which I'd be more than happy to share with you at that time as well. And more importantly, that puts us dead in the middle of what's going on in the U.S., the midterms. So even Americans are going to get to see this. So to your point that you keep making in your videos, that it's not so much that we're against the Americans, it's that they need to tell their MAGA neighbors, hey, knock it off. This is what we're getting. This is what's going on. Well, with this petition and getting some traction across the border as of the fall, trust me, they will know what's going on this side of the border. We will be sounding the alarm. So
nice. Well, hopefully it does gain a lot of momentum. And so far right now, at the time we're recording this video, the petition has 4,714 signatures. So, I do hope that we can get it at least, to 5 digits. There was a previous petition that I helped to feature on my channel. We got that one to 17,000. So, I think for all the viewers that are watching right now, for the Canadian viewers, if you haven't signed this petition or you haven't taken a look at it, I'll leave a link in the description below, and you can click on it, read it over. If you do have questions on this, leave it in the comments below, and either Dave or myself or even Guillaume, maybe we can help to answer them if you have questions. So, yeah, I guess right now, I think a lot of my viewers have signed it, but there may be some that are just hearing about this for the first time. So
word of mouth is an amazing tool. I mean, you look at that chart, that spike, that's all you, Mr. GTL. So, thank you very much for the publicity you're giving. And we're asking your audience to consider at least sharing it with other people, especially if they're concerned about what's going on. And on that note, if I could just take this last opportunity, Indivisible Quebec is doing 2 other events soon. We're waiting on Indivisible HQ in Washington, D.C. to let us know when No Tyrants Forward October will be, and we will be participating in that in Quebec. We're the lead organizer on that. But more importantly, on July 11th, if any of your listeners are either from Montreal or from the eastern townships of Quebec, in other words, up against the New York, Vermont, or Maine or New Hampshire borders, we're going to be having an event going on at the outside of the Haskell Free Library, which is which borders on the borderline of Stansted, Quebec, and Derby Line, Vermont, and it will be to denounce the rise of fascism and what's going on in the U.S. and the fact that it's seeping across the border. We're seeing signs, and maybe we can have another conversation another day about that. But that authoritarianism and autocracy is starting to come to Canada as well, and Quebec. And so we're going to be holding an event right on the borderline, right in view of ICE and so forth. And so everyone is more than welcome. It is a very peaceful event. That is one of our hallmarks as Indivisible. We have a commitment to nonviolence. If you want to know more about that, just go to the Indivisible website. There's a link there. But we are committed to good trouble, nonviolent, peaceful protest, and we're going to be doing that on July 11th, right outside of the Haskell Free Library. And last time it was this is actually our second event. The first one was done by two senior community activists who approached me to help amplify this for the version 2.0, and they did it in March in minus 25 degree temperature, and there was 150 people. So we're hoping to get about 500 people at this one. So if anyone is interested, just reach out to us. There'll be an RSVP page and everything. So hopefully people will come out as well to start showing their mécontentement, as we say in French, with what's going on and the rise of fascism, both below the line and into Canada. So,
okay. Quick question. What is your website?
Our website's quite simple to remember. It's indivisible.quebec. Indivisible.quebec. It is currently there's just a placeholder page because we're working on the petition right now. But as soon as that's done, I will be turning my attention to that as well. It's actually pretty much done. We just have to dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sure everything looks good. But yeah, it's a very simple website to remember. Indivisible.
I'll put a link in it in the description below after as well.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, if just to give you a gauge, I mean, I know we have a lot of Quebec viewers. Quebec is the second largest province in terms of my viewership. So, I know there's going to be a lot of people from your province listening to this right now. So,
yep.
Okay.
And that's probably due to Guillaume. So,
yeah. I mean, we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but I was looking at my analytics, and I believe Ontario is the first in terms of my viewership, then Quebec. So, I know there's going to be a lot of citizens from Quebec right now watching. So. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dave. And I really appreciate you explaining this, in layman's term for me, because I mean, I'm not the best when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I really appreciate you, kind of explain it to me line by line. And, I hope that, we can get this chart number spiking again. And yeah, so for the viewers, if you do want to take a look at this petition, it'll be in the description below, as well as a pinned comment. And if you do have any questions, you can send me an email. And then if it's something that I can't answer, I can easily forward it off to Dave for you.
Absolutely. And when our website for the ICE petition is up and live, which it should be by the end of the week, they'll have a lot more details. So some of the stuff that I mentioned, for example, all those contracts and stuff, there'll be hyperlinks to that so people can see, including the story about Edward, the fisher who got abducted, and all of this stuff will all be on the website so people can take a look at it. So.
Okay. Once the website's up, send me a DM and I will feature it in one of my future videos.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time, Dave, and really appreciate you helping to explain this to my viewers. You did a lot better job than I could have. So, we'll keep in touch, and hopefully, maybe we'll do a follow-up video in the future. Absolutely, because I have to say I am disappointed in one thing, that co-host was not here today. So. You know what? I kind of thought this is a very serious talk, and I figured, you locked co-host out. Yeah, I did lock her out. I can hear her scratching at the door right now. So, no, I'm serious. She's scratching at the door. But I figured this one, I think maybe we should just not have a distraction, at least on my side. Understood. So, but perhaps in future chats. Yeah, future chats. I'll invite her in. So, all right. Well, thanks very much, Dave, and hang around. We'll continue talking. Thank you. All right.